Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's webinar where we'll be talking about setting up Desk.com. Let's begin with some introductions. My name is Brian Suh. I'm the onboarding and training specialist here at Desk, and our guest for today is Barbara Tessa. Do you want to give a brief introduction of yourself, Barbara?
Yes, thanks, Brian. So hi everyone, as Brian said, I'm Barbara Tessa. I'm one of the customer success members here at Desk, and what I do is I help customers set up their new Desk.com sites.
All right, thanks, Barbara. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The training portion of our webinar will last just about 30 to 35 minutes. Following that, we will have a short Q&A. So during the training, if you do have any questions, feel free to type those into the GoToWebinar questions panel, and we'll be monitoring those questions throughout the training. And we may save some of your questions towards the end of the training if they pertain kind of to the larger group. Also, we will be recording today's session, so by any chance, if you can't stay with us for the entire time, or even if you want to maybe watch the recording as you set up your own desk set after, we will email out the recording. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Barb, and we'll get started.
All right, thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be speaking with you today. So for the past year, I have been working with our customers of all sizes to get their support processes streamlined and configured in Desk. Most of you I know have recently purchased Desk, and you probably have some questions on how to make it work for your team, and that's exactly what we'll cover today. So I'll take you through our setup journey and address some common configuration questions. So specifically for our agenda, we'll talk about key business questions you should ask your team before really starting to set up Desk. Second, I'll work through a demo setup for a bike shop so you can see how we actually configure everything. Third, I'll discuss some more advanced features that may be interesting for your team to explore at a later stage. And we'll stop for some Q&A. We'll talk, we'll go over any questions that you guys have. Then I'll do a summary of everything that we've talked about and focus on next steps and give you guys the resources that you need to set up Desk for yourself. So as you may have already noticed, Desk is very configurable. And when you start working through your setup, consider what kind of experience you want to provide for your customers. You may want to launch with a basic setup that you basically only set up an email channel to answer customer questions. So super basic, gets you right in front of your customers. Think of this as the point A to point B version. But on the other hand, you may want to actually take your time and really customize Desk before you start working with your customers. In this version, for instance, you could have a full support center enabled, and you are supporting multiple channels to respond to your customer inquiries. So that choice from the A to B version versus the advanced setup is totally up to you. Today we'll focus on the getting set up, the A to B version. Now before I actually dive into any kind of Desk setup, I like to take a step back and reflect on the business. I want to really understand what my customers are contacting me about and what their needs are. So the 5 questions I start with is, number 1, what type of customers do I have, or does your business have? Why do your customers contact you? What methods or channels do your customers use to contact you? How many inquiries do you get from your customers each day? And ultimately, what are the pain points or problems that you're looking to resolve with your current support? So let's say that I run a local bike shop. Let's call it Bay Cycles. And as an example, I'm going to answer these 5 questions I just mentioned for this particular business. In this bike shop, I have 2 types of customers. The first is a cyclist who actually will come in and buy products, and then the second type is the vendor who actually supplies my bike shop. And the main problem that I'm facing in this business is a lack of visibility into why my customers are contacting us, and also I have really no visibility or real data to provide our management team. So from a reporting perspective, I just don't have any real metrics to say what we're doing and why we're doing things. So taking these sort of 5 questions to my team, what I've discovered is a bit of insight that can help me get started. So my staff tells me that cyclists are contacting us for 3 main reasons: bike sales, service, and events. The bike types they inquire about are cruisers, commuters, and road bikes. They talk about events. So we usually have 3 events, and they ask us about our Friday fun rides, the monthly 20K ride, and annual race. And the customers, our cyclists, typically contact us by phone and email. And the email specifically for our cyclists is baycycles101@gmail.com, and most of these inquiries are handled by our shop staff. So I also think about our vendors as customers, and vendors contact us about new products, orders, and promotions. It's important for us to respond to them in a timely fashion, so I really do want to track their inquiries in Desk as well. We get most of their inquiries through email, but some by phone as well, and our vendor customers have their own dedicated email address. That's baycycles101 plus vendors@gmail.com, and the inquiries from this group are primarily handled by the management team. So now that I've kind of thought about those 5 questions for this bike shop, I'm going to create a data model that I can configure in Desk. And let's talk about how this would work. So if a cyclist customer contacts us, they may ask us about our upcoming Friday fun ride, where and when the ride starts, and how long it is. If then a vendor contacts us, they may be asking about, or maybe wanting to talk to us about a new promotion, and the specific company that's doing that is Mission Bikes, about their Revalencia model. So this as a whole is basically my all the contact reasons that I want to capture based on those 5 questions. And just one thing to note here, the blue text here, the customer type, the contact reason, these are the things I get contacted about, and this is the information I really want to capture for reporting purposes. So when we start configuring Desk, these main categories that are highlighted in blue are going to be stored in what are called custom fields, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Now let's talk about the bird's eye view of how the system actually works. So when a customer, let's say his name is Josh, sends me an email, Desk enables me to process that email based on its unique attributes. What I mean by that is for things like who it's from, who it's being sent to, the subject line, anything that's unique. And based on these unique attributes, I can configure Desk to take certain actions through the rules engine. One example of a rule for a new inbound email from Josh is to assign it to a specific staff member, say Emily. Emily is a staff member that handles typically most of the cyclist questions. And so I'm going to ask Emily to not only just get assigned to this particular type of case from people like Josh, but also to capture information like contact reason. Emily can reply back directly, or she can use what are called macros or canned responses and sort of these power tools that help her get back to people like Josh a lot faster. So now when Desk actually sends that email out from Emily, it will apply a look and feel based on a very specific email reply template that I can modify. So now that I'm actually prepared with my data model and an overview of how Desk works, let's talk about the specific tasks that I need to complete in order to customize Desk for my business. So in this basic A to B setup, I've come up with 10 steps that should get you up and running and answering your customer inquiries pretty much within the hour. So in step 1, I'm going to keep my implementation really simple, and for the time being, I'm only going to enable the email channel. When I'm ready, I can always come back and add additional channels like phone or any social media channels, but for now, I'm just going to start with the email channel. In step 2, based on the business needs that we talked about, like the categories such as customer type and contact reason, I'm going to create custom fields so my team can easily capture this information on each of the cases that come in. In step 3, I'm going to create a group and add one of my colleagues into Desk to help test out my configuration. And when I'm done testing at the end, I'll add the rest of my team members then. In step 4, I'm going to leverage desk automation by creating an inbound rule to correctly route the vendor and cyclist inquiries to my management and staff teams respectively. In step 5, I'm going to customize my inbox view for my team and clearly show the vendor and cyclist cases separately in what are called filters. In step 6, I'm going to turn on what's called an auto acknowledgement, and that is something that is basically an immediate response Desk sends to customers who contact us so they know that we've received their inquiry. In step 7, I will create a macro, which is essentially a canned message for common questions, but it can do a lot more. In step 8, I'll turn on Desk email notifications for new interactions so my staff know when a new case comes into Desk if they don't happen to have the application open. Step 9, we'll do some testing, and you guys get to participate in this as well, so that should be exciting. And in step 10, we'll add any remaining team members and connect our actual support email address. All right, so now we'll jump into Desk. Okay. So, as an administrator on the site, when you guys first log in, you'll see a screen that looks like this. We have the admin panel, agent inbox, and business insights. So when I go into the admin section, I see I have full control, essentially, of managing all of the case management options in Desk, as well as any site settings. So these are site-wide settings. We're not going to touch on too much today. Most of the time, we'll spend up here in the actual case management area. So before I actually start going in and changing anything, let's see what our current agent view looks like. So when I go into the agent inbox and I open up one of these test cases, what I'll see is the customer reply in this instance. I see a reply area. On the right-hand side, I'll see some standard fields like case status, subject line description. On the left-hand side, I'll see a customer section with customer information, as well as a company section. So for the purposes of these demos, we'll be spending most of our time on the right-hand side working on case-level custom fields. And one more thing to point out, we'll also be managing these filters, so we'll configure that in a little bit as well. But this is essentially when you first have not done anything to your Desk site, this is what it looks like. So let's jump into step 1, and that is enabling the email channel. So under the admin section in channels, I have multiple channels where customers can contact me: support center, email, chat, phone, Twitter, and Facebook. For the time being, I'm going to turn everything off except for the email channel. So let's go do that now. I'll click on advanced settings. I'm going to disable these channels. Click update. Email, I'll just keep on for now. I'll go to chat, advanced settings, and I'm going to disable this. Phone, I'm going to turn this off. Next, we go to Twitter, advanced settings, disabled, and Facebook, advanced settings, disabled. So how I know this actually has taken effect is when I go back into the agent inbox. I'm just going to hit refresh. And when I start to create a new case from this plus button at the top, I should only have one option, and that's to actually create an email. All right, so let's go back. And now that we've actually only enabled email, we're going to go and start creating those custom fields based on the bike shop categories that we talked about. So to get to custom fields, I'll go to cases, and then custom fields. So the first field that I'm going to add is my customer type. So the first thing I'm typing in is the name of the field. This is going to be what's visible to my team. The key value can be the same name, just connected either by an underscore or just having a one word, this is a value that gets stored in the database. The data type I'm going to choose is list because I already know the specific values that I want selected. I do not want any free text in these fields. So I'll choose cyclist, and I will choose vendor. Okay, I'm going to hit add, and I'll see that here. The second thing I'm going to add is the contact reason. Again, it's going to be a list item, because at this point, I'm pretty sure I know the main reasons why customers contact us, and if at a later point I want to add more options, I can definitely do that. So for now, I have events, I have service, I have bike sales, new products, order confirmations, and promotions. Okay, once I've added all my options, I can see them here, and I'll click add. Now, I actually could add all the other custom fields, but to save you guys some time watching me type, I've actually pre-created them. So I'll just go ahead and turn them on. And they're the same things. So for example, the event type, it was a list where we have Friday Fun Rise, monthly 20K Rise, and annual race. So that's the same as we saw earlier. So let's go see what this looks like in our agent view. So I'll go back to the agent console. Okay, let's click on a case. And I can see that these new custom fields have been added to my case layout. So previously we just had these standard fields from status down to description, and now I have these additional custom fields. So I do want to kind of think about how my agents are going to use this particular field. The order is not exactly the way that I would want it to fill out. So in our data model, we first talked about starting with our customer type, but here customer type is kind of the bottom, so I don't really like this flow. But we can change that. So I'll go back into the admin settings, and under cases, I'm going to click on Next Gen Case Layouts. And this allows me to actually create different layouts for different teams in Desk. For now, I'm just going to create one layout called Staff, add everybody in here. Staff. And on the right-hand side, I can see all my custom fields. To add them to this case layout, I just simply drag them onto the case. Okay, so let's drag them all here. Okay, so to make these a little bit easier to read, I'm going to make them full width. Okay, and I'm going to select myself and add this new case layout. So let's see what this looks like now. I'll hit refresh. Great, and now customer type is right at the top of my custom field. So I can see cyclist and vendor, and that is the order I want to see my fields in. Okay, so now that I've created the look and feel I want for my case, I want to add in a team member, a group and my team member, so I can start segregating the work, so to handle the cyclist and handle the vendor inquiries. So first I'll go to groups. I'll create a new group called staff, and then I'll add a second group called management. I'll add one colleague into the staff group, and that's going to be my colleague Angela. Okay. And I'll select staff and hit add. So now I can see that when I go to groups, I have one user in the staff group. Great. So this is the start of getting everything set up. And next I'm going to start going into the rules engine. So if you remember, the rules engine is where a lot of the automation happens. And the first thing I'm going to do is create an inbound rule to assign the cyclist and vendor emails to specific groups. So depending on which email address the customer's email on, we're going to segregate them. Now before I can actually create anything, I do have to go back and create a new custom field. Since I already know the specific emails that our users are going to be emailing, I'm going to add them right here into a custom field. So let's call this email source. And it's a list type. And these are my customer-specific emails. So my cyclists are emailing day cycles 101 at gmail.com. And my vendors are emailing day cycles 101 plus vendors at gmail.com. Looks good. Let's go back into the rules. So now I'm going to create this new inbound rule. Let's call it assign cyclist emails. I'm going to choose the email interaction type and click add. In this rule engine, I have a few options, and let's walk through what I can do here. So these are my condition statements. So depending on what type of case I want to look for, I would specify those attributes that we talked about earlier, like subject line or the email that's coming from or being sent to in either the all or any conditions. And then the rule action is what's actually going to happen when a case meets these conditions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm only going to run this rule one time. So I'm going to only apply this to cases where the status is new, meaning that it's only come in that one time. So look for case status is new. And in Desk, a case can only be new one time when it first comes into Desk. If your customer then emails you or replies to your agent, it is not considered a new email at that point. And in the any conditions, I'm going to look for email to or email copy to be day cycles at gmail.com. So whether they email to or copy this email address, that's what I want to look for. The rule action in this case is going to be to set the email source, which is the custom field I just created. And I'm going to also set the group to staff. Set case assigned group to the staff group that I just created. I'll enable it and hit update. Now so nothing actually at this point is going to happen because we haven't got any email sent to us. But if they do, I want to make sure that my team can actually see these emails specifically that are coming from cyclists. So in order to do that, I'll create a new filter called cyclist emails. I'll click add. And in this case, I'm looking for where the email source has been set to daycycles101 at gmail.com. I can also change the default sort, and I typically like to see the receive date, so see the newest first. The permission to this filter right now is for all users, which I'll keep, but at a later point I can always lock it down just for my staff members since they're the ones that are going to be working in this filter. So let's hit update and then see what that looks like in Desk. All right, there we go. So we have a new filter. That's the only change we really see right now, but we don't because we don't have any emails coming in. So I'll do the exact same thing with the rules for vendors. So since the rules are very similar, what I'll do is just duplicate this one and say assign vendor emails. Same idea, case status is new, so I only want this rule to run one time, but the email address we're looking for is slightly different. It's vendors. And I'll set the case email source to daycycles101 vendors, and set the case assigned group to management. I'll enable it, update it. In the filters, I'll create a similar filter just to show cases from vendors. Enable this, click update. So now when I go to Desk, I will see both the cyclist and vendor email filters. Okay. So next what I'll do is enable the auto acknowledgement, which is the notification that Desk sends to your customer when they email you. This rule is actually conveniently already pre-created in Desk for you, so all you have to do is turn it on. So when I turn this on, what's going to happen is when a case is new and if the customers have not received an auto acknowledgement in the last 24 hours, then it's going to send them a standard reply of the auto acknowledgement. At a later time, you can always go in and customize it, but this is the standard one and works pretty well. Great. So at this point, my agents are already maybe using Desk, for instance, and they're getting very similar inquiries. In my case, the cyclists are often asking about the events that we host. So what I want to do is make their lives a little bit easier and create a macro that will shorten the time that they reply to those customers. So a macro, I've actually pre-created one since there's a bit of typing involved, but basically I created this one for cyclist events, Friday Night Fun Ride. So if anybody is emailing our team about this particular event or any event, what we can do is create a quick reply, and a quick reply is just a text I can enter here. Within these curly braces, I'm actually referencing a liquid variable that looks into the database and pulls out the customer's first name, and I'm providing a canned response about this particular event. Besides just having a quick reply for my agent to not have to type this information over and over again, what I can do is also set those custom fields that I just created. So first of all, I definitely know that this is going to be a cyclist customer that's emailing me, so I'll set this to cyclist. I know that they're emailing, the contact reason is events, and if I care to track what types of events, then I can also select the Friday Fun Ride from the list of custom fields. Okay, I'm going to enable everyone in Desk to be able to use this macro, but if later on the list of macros grows and they're very team specific, I can always lock this down to specific groups. Okay, so let's enable this, hit update. And lastly, what I'll do is go back into rules and enable notifications for new cases. So this means that anytime a new email gets sent into Desk, whether it's for the first time or that 100th time, I want the assigned agent or the team to get a notification if they don't spend a lot of time in the actual Desk application. All right, so this is bringing us to step 9, and it's time to test. So at this point, we've set up our basic emails. So we don't actually we haven't connected a real email address, but we can use the Desk email address provided to us. So to see what your email address is, you can go to Channels, Email, and under Inbound Emails, you'll see that this support email address comes out of the box. And so if anybody actually emails this particular address, it will create a case in Desk. And so at this point, I'll ask our team to send in some test cases. And if you guys are on the phone and you want to try it as well, send in a test case to support at zzz-spacecycles1.desk-mail.com. It's also in, I believe, the GoToWebinar window, so you guys don't have to squint and read this. You can just click and reply from there. So let's see what happens. Now, where would you expect these emails to go? Is sort of the question I'll pose to you guys. Feel free to think about it or provide a reply in the GoToMeeting. Do you expect it to go into the cyclist emails, vendor emails, all cases, inbox, or my cases? So these are the filter options that we have right now. Cool, thanks, Brian. So what we see is our first test case coming in from Brian. And so he emailed support@zzz-basecycles1.desk-mail.com. So we don't see anything going to the cyclist emails or vendor emails because we didn't actually set up the support email out of the box. So we didn't say if an email comes from this particular email address routed to cyclist or vendor emails. So what's going to happen is it's going to go into our general inbox as well as all cases. And how I can figure out what filter my case is going to show up in, I can simply go into admin, into cases and filters, and then read the description for each of the filters to see what cases I can expect. So for example, in the inbox, this filter shows all unresolved cases that are new, open, or pending. And the way that they were able to achieve that is by selecting the condition where the status, the case status, is less than or equal to pending. And the reason it's less than or equal to as a logic operator is that Desk assumes that this is actually an ordered list, with this being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So anything less than or equal to pending would mean pending, new, or open. So these three statuses. And because our first case is new when it first comes in, it will show up in this filter. All right, so there we go. Those are our first test emails. Awesome. So at this point, my next steps would be to connect my real email address. So when customers actually do send an email to basecycles101@gmail.com, it gets into Desk. I will do the same thing. I will do testing, and then I will add the rest of my team to help me test and tweak this as well. Now, just to show you guys what a macro looks like, so let's say Brian actually wrote back to me or wrote to me about an event. I can use that macro I created, cyclist event, Friday night fun ride. I'll click that. It actually fills out this this email for me. It pulls Brian's name, and it also fills in these custom fields like cyclist, customer type, contact reason is event, and event type is a Friday fun ride. So I'll just send an update to this case to Brian. I can resolve it right away too if I want to, if it's a one-time interaction where I don't expect any replies, or I can just hit send and then resolve it later. All right, so how do you actually get your cases into Desk? There are a few different ways to do that. Number one, you can always just use the support email address provided by Desk. If you want to provide that to your customers, you can definitely do that. Emails go in here, you can use rules and configure Desk with just this particular support email address. The second way to do it is by clicking Add Mailbox. This is going to add a mailbox with the IMAP connection. And the third way, and the way that our team typically recommends customers set up emails, is with postmarked email forwarding. And email forwarding is really easy to do now with this set up email forwarding guide that takes you through exactly how to set up your email and get your cases going into Desk. Basically, you will forward them from Gmail or any of your other providers. You can keep a copy in those in Gmail still, but most of your team is going to be working out of Desk, so this is where the cases are going to be forwarded. This should take you probably 2 to 3 minutes to set up. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so that covers the majority of our basic Desk setup, and you may be wondering where to go from here. Now, there are a lot of cool modules that you can set up in Desk, so let's take a look at a few of them. So previously when Josh contacted us, he sent us a direct email. what I can do now is actually enable the Desk Support Center and create various articles that can answer customer questions. This is a really great option in cases where you have thousands to millions of customers, or perhaps a user community that likes to answer their own questions. From the Support Center, if the articles are still not answering your customer questions, you can enable the contact form. And the contact form is really great because it's tied in very closely with the Desk case management. So as soon as a customer emails you, it'll create a case in Desk. But the great thing is you can actually customize this contact form, and you can add your custom fields, like in my case, the cyclist versus vendor customer type, the contact reason. So that way I can really take advantage of those power tools and reduce the workload for my team. Likewise, when a case comes into Desk from the Support Center, you can still enable the auto acknowledgement, which is really nice. And if you want to, you can customize that further with logos and any other branding and messaging, so your customer has a very consistent experience across all of the ways that they can contact you. Likewise, when the case comes in from the Support Center or an email, my agent, Emily, in this case, would be interacting with Josh. If they have multiple interactions, we can actually also enable what's called the Customer Feedback Survey, or CSAT, the Customer Sentiment tool that helps you understand how you're doing. So a customer can click on that and tell you how that interaction went, and you can have that with every reply right in the email. To enable it, it's really pretty simple. What we do is we'll go back into Desk. Under the Cases section, we have Customer Satisfaction as an option to turn on. And here, what I can do is choose the feedback question I want to ask, what type of feedback I want my customers to see in their email reply, and if I want to ask an additional question. So to enable it, I can just turn it on. And this code is automatically embedded in your reply theme. So when you turn it on, when you're replying back to the customer, you can see this feedback form with every resolution or with just the first resolution that your agent sends. Okay, so at this point we have covered quite a bit of ground, and I did want to take a small break to address any questions that may have come up so far. So feel free to type in any questions into the GoToWebinar chat window, and then we'll address them here.
Thanks, Barb. We do thank you for the questions that have been coming in. Appreciate that. We do have a few that we did want to kind of share with the group. First one is from a customer here. Some of our agents aren't filling out all the fields we want to capture. How do I make a field required for our agents?
Great. That's a very common question that we get quite a bit. So if you are getting a lot of cases and at some later point you want to report on the data that you're getting, you definitely want to make sure that the fields are completed. So let's look at how we would do that. So Desk doesn't specifically have a way to create custom fields that are required. So I can't put an asterisk here and automatically make it a required field, but what I can do is use the rules engine to make it required. So let's see how we would do that. On the rules, I'll go to the case resolved rule category, and this is a type of rule that will run when the agent clicks the resolve button, whether it's just resolve or send and resolve. In this particular case, let's say one of my most important fields to capture is the customer type field. So let's call this customer type required. And what I'm looking for is the case status is resolved, so the agent has just tried to click resolve. And I'm looking to see if the customer type field is not selected. So let's look for customer type. Okay. So I'm not going to actually choose anything here. I'll just leave it blank. And so what I'm essentially saying is, if the customer this field is not filled out, but the agent is trying to resolve the case, what I want to do is reopen the case. So I'll set the case status back to open. And I want to provide some feedback to my agent so they know why they can't resolve the case. And in order to do that, I will create what's called a label. So I'll append case label, and let's say this customer type required. So it's cool that I can actually create a label right from this rule. I'll enable this and then update it. So next time I try to go into the case and resolve it without having the customer type selected, the case is not going to be resolved. It's going to remain open, and it's going to have this particular label appended. Once the customer type is completed, the case can be resolved. And if I want to be very particular, I can actually create another rule that will then remove this label. But the basic way to make this a required field is to create this in a case resolved rule. So that's probably an example of a more advanced workflow, but great for reporting.
All right, thanks, Barb. Looks like we have another question here. Is there a customer or company view in Desk?
Yes. Is there more to that question?
Looks like that's it. Maybe we could just show them the...
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So if the question is about how do I see if it is coming from a company that I get frequent emails from, when I open up the case just from here, actually I can add customer and company level information here as well. So this is my inbox view. This ellipsis, this vertical ellipsis here, allows me to see more information. So typically you may want to put the company or customer information, and I typically add the case ID. So that way, if I'm working with other colleagues on a case, we'll know exactly which case we're talking about. So let me, for now, just remove, let's see, I don't need priority, so I'll just remove that in order to have a little bit more room. I can drag and drop the columns as well, so I usually prefer to have my case IDs on the left. But this is one quick way, so let's actually reorganize to put customer and company together. Maybe I can just put them on this side. So I can see this information at a glance in my inbox. Then when I actually click into the case, all of my customer and company information is stored on the left-hand side. So this is what we call the customer object. And down here, this is the company object. So there are 3 levels of objects in Desk. One is the case, and that's where we spend most of our time customizing to capture case level information. But I can also add custom fields at the customer as well as the company level. And that's where you'd see the majority of that information. One other thing that you may be thinking of is, how do I know if this particular customer has emailed previously? What I can do is click from this case onto the customer tab here, and this would be a list where I could see every single case that this particular customer has submitted.
Thanks, Barb. Looks like we did get another question during the training that I think is a good example here. The question is, I want to create subcategories for our product types so we can track which questions are coming in. How can I do this?
Can you repeat the question?
I want to create subcategories for our product types so we can track what types of questions are coming in. How can I do this?
Great. Okay. So if I've basically identified all of the issue types, then I can actually link them together. So if there are more issue types, for example, if I want to add other contact reasons, I can always add them here. But if one example in my case, I guess, is if the customer type is cyclist, I may only want to show them subcategories of contact reasons that they would select. So they're always emailing me about events, service, or bike sales. They're not going to be talking to me about new products, order confirmations, or promotions. So what I can actually do is use this concept of dependencies or dependent drop-downs, and based on selection 1, for example, customer type, so let's call this controlling field customer type, the dependent field is going to be the contact reason. So if it's a cyclist, we know that they're going to email us about events, service, and bike sales. And if it's a vendor, they're going to email us about new products, order confirmations, and promotions. So let's save this. I'll enable it, and let's see how this actually looks in the case view. So let's jump into this case. Just quickly do a refresh to make sure the changes carry through. And I'll actually need to pick a new case because we know that Brian's already a cyclist. So Angela sent in a test case, and let's say Angela is our vendor type. So because Angela is a vendor, now we only see vendor type subcategories. So we can select from new products, order confirmations, or promotions, not the ones that are available when I look at cyclist. If I want to change her to then be a cyclist, the contact reasons now are going to be event, service, or bike sales, which are related to cyclists. And that's how you can create subcategories that are relevant based on this logical selection. And you can create up to 4 different categories or dependencies.
All right, I think that was all the questions from the audience that we wanted to cover. Barb, do you have anything else you want to share with the group?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of to summarize, and thank you so much for all the questions. To summarize, I want to recap what we covered today. So first, we reflected on our business, and we did that with our 5 key questions. With these 5 key questions, we can develop a data model and decide what information is really crucial for us to capture from our customers in order to be able to have all the data to report on later, or just for data integrity purposes, know what's going on with our customers. Then we went through our setup checklist and created rules to assign cases to a specific group. We created a macro. We enabled some auto acknowledgements so that way customers could get a reply automatically when they emailed us. We did a bit of testing by sending in cases to our into our support email. And lastly, we really want to talk about what's next. Once you have your basic setup, what can you do with Desk? So this is a summary of the A to B setup. What we have is all the steps that we just did, plus a reason to implement, and a Desk article link. So this is from our support center, and it can give you a little bit more context if you're setting this up for the first time. We'll provide this to you after the webinar, so you have all the links. And I put together also some ideas for optional advanced feature setup. So you can really start thinking about, where do you want to go after you've created your first Desk site. Lastly, let's talk about resources and where you can get help. Our Desk support site has a ton of videos and articles that can answer a lot of your configuration questions, and later on probably reporting and agent training. And I've also provided a link on the right here that can get you some ideas of support centers that our other customers have built right in Desk. So that's a really interesting link to check out. Now, if you need a little bit more guidance and you feel like you're getting stuck, you are more than welcome to contact our support team for additional help. You can call us, you can email us, and we have a team around the world that can really meet you in your time zone. All right, and that wraps up my part of the webinar today. Thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to your feedback on how we can make this a better experience. Happy launching, and looking forward to seeing your Desk site.